Do y'all remember when Overwatch was like a phenomenon? When you couldn't scroll for 2 seconds on Twitter without seeing high noon memes or Torzhorn play of the games where he's just respawning? I mean, do you remember when Overwatch won Game of the Year in 2016? When do multiplayer shooters ever win that? I'll give you a hint. Never before and never since. So with all that said, what really happened to this game? Why did people switch up on it so much? Why is this game that was at launch so beloved and celebrated so often the laughingstock of gaming today? In this video, I wanted to talk about my experience with Overwatch as someone who's played on and off since beta, about what happened, what changed, and how Overwatch got the status it has today. Like and subscribe please. I found that graph that everyone uses and it made me a bit sad. I'm gonna preface this by saying I'm not very good at Overwatch. When I was trying my hardest, I was like a low diamond player. So this video will be mainly the perspective of a casual player who loved the game and still wants to, so take my opinions with a grain of salt if you must. Overwatch was the first shooter I booted up and actually understood. My friends had tried really hard to get my stupid, stubborn Nintendo kid brain to like Call of Duty, Destiny, or any other flavor of the year FPS, and it just never clicked for me. Something about deathmatch shooters just felt so mundane, just having to run around aimlessly until you shoot someone else in the back, or someone else shoots you in the back, only to respawn and do it again. Realistic gunplay was and still is kind of boring to me. This isn't me saying these games are bad, just more that they clearly were not for me. This is why Overwatch captivated me. When the beta dropped, I was flashbanged with so many characters that not only played differently, but had their own identities. I remember the first character I ever played was Mei, and I didn't realize she had an alternate fire, so I was just kind of freezing people over and over again while jumping around them until they died, and that was fun to me for some reason. I also played Junkrat and had so much fun blowing people up and jumping around with his mine. All the different abilities really set this game apart from the rest of the genre. So Overwatch was a day one purchase for me. On launch, I played an absurd amount of Overwatch, learning new characters, more about my old characters, oh fuck, make and shoot icicles, and just easily having some of the most fun I've ever had with online multiplayer games. The first year of Overwatch, we constantly got new events with new modes to keep it fresh. Lucio Ball, Junkenstein's Revenge, Mei's Snowball Fight, Capture the Flag. New characters would get added. Ana is genuinely still one of the coolest healer designs in any video game to me. A grandma with a medicine sniper rifle and a sleep dart. Sombra is also kind of cool, this like stealth hacker who would sneak around undetected and disable your team. It felt like the game was going to keep adding and improving forever. And I think this first year is the essence of why Overwatch was so popular. First, the base was just captivating. So many interesting characters with cool designs to explore, very memeable voice lines, and most importantly, tons of new stuff to do constantly being added to keep the game fresh. But as we passed that 1 year mark and got our anniversary event, it became pretty clear we weren't going to be getting any more new events. There's this 3-month gap between anniversary and summer games, which was the longest between any other events by far, and when summer games did come back for the first time in 2017, it was just Lucio Ball again. Sure, there was a new map and a ton of fun new skins and stuff, but nothing new gameplay wise. This is kind of how every repeat event felt, just more of what we had the previous year with perhaps a few tweaks to the old mode if we're lucky. I also think this is the point when characters started getting more and more annoying. I mean, Orisa would sit behind a shield with damage reduction. Doomfist would jump into your backline, one-shot a support, then leave. Moira had 2 abilities that would lock onto you and do damage without aiming. Brig? Wrecking Ball jumps in, ground pounds, then runs away and does it over and over again. Ashe is like a normal sniper, that's fine. Baptiste has an ability that makes anyone standing inside of it invincible. Sigma was just another very good shield character, and Echo launched with an ult that could be like 3 Reinhardt ults. This is also when they started focusing on esports, and I think that's a big point of decline. I think balancing your very popular multi-platform game based on top players on PC is bound to make a lot of your player base unhappy. When characters like Torbjorn or Junkrat, who are really bad at top level PC play, are really oppressive in your like mid to low level console play, I think buffing them a lot, which they did, can be really frustrating for that player base. Focusing on your top players might make a technically more balanced game, but you're doing it at the cost of the majority of your player base. Overwatch wasn't as popular as it was because of your top players. Blizzard would also come into a lot of controversy in these coming years that would really sour a lot of people's opinions on the company as a whole. In 2019, Blizzard banned a top-level Hearthstone player from one of their tournaments for expressing support for Hong Kong. In 2021, there were multiple sexual harassment claims and lawsuits brought up against the company, among a few other things. But basically, in the span of a few years, Blizzard had lost all of its good reputation, and for good reason. By 2020, Overwatch 1 had completely stopped receiving updates. With a light promise of Overwatch 2 being in development, the meta got very boring. Basically, everyone would run Orisa and Sigma and spam shields, and with no hope of balance patches, this is what the game would look like until Overwatch 2 came out. And then Overwatch 2 did come out. And yeah. While I do think a lot of the negative backlash for this game was people who had justifiable leftover frustrations from the first one, this game also really does deserve a lot of it. First off, in the 2-year hiatus from Overwatch 1 updates, the devs had added 3 new characters and 5 new maps, 1 new mode, and the promise of a big co-op PvE mode, which, spoilers, we never got and never will get. They removed the 2 capture point mode, which on one hand was the most unpopular mode, sure, but also, why are we removing content in the sequel? Also, in its place, they added push, which is just way worse in my opinion, so we still just have a terrible game mode clogging the matchmaking. It seems kind of light for a new game, right? Well, that's because there's also some big system changes with this game to hopefully help with balance. People used to get really frustrated by all the CC and stuns in the game, so the devs removed, like 3 of them. The others are still there. I mean, they even gave Orisa a projectile stun that wall splats on a 6-second cooldown. Now, instead of his flashbang, Cassidy has a magnetic homing grenade that does a lot of damage. Wait, actually, that's bullshit? So now it's a magnetic grenade that hinders you. What does that mean? I don't really know, but that's actually still kind of annoying. So what if he had a flashbang that hinders you instead? What are we doing? Mei can no longer freeze people, but can still slow them, and Brig can no longer stun with shield bash most of the time. Sombra still hacks, Ana still sleep darts. There's still a lot, and arguably more CC in this game than there used to be. The other big change was removing one of the tanks to make the game 5v5, which is a decision that they are still trying to balance to this day, 2 years later. Yeah, believe it or not, taking an entire roster of characters that were designed around 6v6 and putting them in a 5v5 game will not be very smooth. Certain characters' abilities became so much more oppressive when there's only one tank. Zenyatta Discord Orb, Ana Anti-Heal, Bastion Turret Form, and then some tanks who were designed to be played alongside another tank like Roadhog were left behind for more than a year until he got a proper rework. The fact that any player in the game can swap and completely invalidate certain tanks feels abysmal. You almost never get to play what you want, and if you do, it's because the enemy team is letting you. Tanks that rely on self-heal to sustain get destroyed by Ana. Tanks that don't have a lot of range get destroyed by hit scans and snipers. Not to mention, certain tanks counter other tanks even harder. Do not even get me started on Mauga. When you are the only tank, you are not only the easiest character in the game to counter, but also the most important character to counter, which means that everyone is gonna counter you, and it feels bad. Every patch, it feels like the devs are addressing the tank problem by making them spongier and spongier. But like, what if there was some sort of healthier solution? Where, I don't know, there was some kind of mythical creature called an off-tank that could help deal with having every ability in the game thrown at you and make counterpicking just a little more complicated. It feels very stubborn the way the developers keep digging themselves deeper and deeper into this hole that they created and could easily escape at any time. Sure, 2 tanks had its issues like double shield, but those seem much easier to address than rebalancing the entire game from scratch. Hell, they already reworked Orisa, so double shield would not be nearly as problematic, and if it were still an issue, just put a limit on how many shield tanks you can pick on a team together. Overwatch 2 also went free to play, which means that it's time for a battle pass, baby. And very expensive skins. I think this also doesn't really work for Overwatch, because loot boxes in Overwatch 1 could be earned by grinding XP and gave you 4 different items. If you got duplicates, it gave you currency that you could use to eventually buy whichever item you wanted from the shop. I think that was actually a really good system, minus the whole gambling thing. But now loot boxes are gone, which is nice in that gambling sense, but the only thing to replace it is a battle pass. And let me say, the Overwatch battle pass is dog shit. While you might not use every item you get in a Fortnite battle pass, you still can. In Overwatch, grinding a battle pass level could get you a voice line for a character you don't even play. Because of how specialized the characters are, it doesn't really feel rewarding to get such small things like voice lines, victory poses, and sprays for characters you don't ever want to touch. Sure, you would get those things from loot boxes before, but if you did, it was more of like a, oh well, I'll just go get another one in like half an hour. With the battle pass, this is all you get for an entire season, 3 months. Shop skins are like $20, which is about the same as other games, but still, like, how did it get to this point? In my opinion, the monetization seems more predatory than the loot boxes were, because it's impossible to grind enough currency in one season to get anything worthwhile, and what you get from the battle pass is almost guaranteed to be less worthwhile than what you'd get from the same amount of grinding on Overwatch 1 through loot boxes. This game is just so frustrating, and I hate that, because I want to love it. Every time I think I'm done playing Overwatch for good, I think about how fun it is to wall ride around as Lucio, or play a really aggressive Reinhardt. The characters are so fun. They're just stuck in the wrong game. I can't get my Lucio fix anywhere else. I really hope Overwatch can turn everything around, its design flaws, its monetization, its reputation, everything. Because at the end of the day, the thing that upsets me the most about Overwatch nowadays is that it feels like I will never get back that game that enraptured me and so many others in 2016.